All right, why don't we go ahead and get started here. I've got 6:30 on the nose. I think Joel is probably not joining us. And I saw that Mr. Wagon couldn't join us. Was there anyone else, Sharon? No, we're good? Okay. So then why don't we go ahead and move on to item 1 on the agenda, which is item 2 on the agenda, which is the OPM update.
Great. Ben, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Yep, let me give you rights 1 second. Let's see. I'm going to make both Sam Bradner's co-hosts because there's 2 of you in the meeting. Good to go.
All right. Great. I believe everybody received this from Sharon. This is our monthly OPM report. We have this, and then Jim Jordan is in a separate agenda item is going to walk us through kind of an update on sustainability. Design permitting coordination. We are still trudging through the RIDOT permit. Our last step, we believe now, is some additional surveying work that was just approved last week. I do not have an update where PAR is on that activity, but that is the last step that we'll need to kind of close out the plats so that RIDOT can hopefully issue its approval, and then we can put this behind us. Right now, it's not holding up any critical path work. The work that we're doing out in the right-of-way has been relatively minimal, but once we're ready to go, those plats need to be in place, as well as the bonding from the subcontractor on site, which is D. Gregorio. Just another update here that is not listed, just on kind of ongoing permitting. We are hosting a monthly coordination meeting with the authorities having jurisdiction, so the fire marshal as well as the building inspector. So they are joining us actually this week. It's this Wednesday morning. They come out, they do a site walk with Gilbane and the OPM team. And the project team suggested this just as a good way, and we've done this on other projects where they can really understand what's going on in the project. They can bring up issues, and we can also kind of inform them about where we are with schedules. So we think they've been pretty productive so far. I think we've had 2 meetings. We'll continue those throughout the entire duration of the project.
Hey, Sam?
Yes, sir.
Has anything substantive come out of that by way of feedback from either the fire marshal or the building inspector?
Not to my knowledge. And again, I think the first meeting or so, and Tony's been there, he's nodding his head no. I think they've been, good conversations, and I think appreciated by the HJs as well, that they can kind of get a look into the building, which they don't always, they don't always see early on as things are coming out of the ground. Tony, I don't know if you have any other comments.
Nate, the last meeting, many of the members were on vacation. It was the 4th of July timeframe. So this is really the next one this Wednesday, which should have everybody there.
Okay.
But I can keep you updated.
Yeah, and we're happy to add that too to our kind of the memo, just so folks understand kind of what some of the conversations are that go on at those meetings.
Okay.
Commissioning update, again, recurring pretty much, we have the team out there pretty much every week working on, a lot of envelope work, which we'll look at in a couple minutes. They're out there on a weekly visit, and then mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection. We had a kickoff at the end of July, and with those activities starting to ramp up, we'll just kind of get into a cadence of Stephen Turner Inc. being on site pretty much for the duration of the project as we really ramp up into construction. The major milestones, drywall is beginning this month. Actually, I was out there today. That you can actually see boards starting to go up. A big milestone will be window glazing, which is to start next month. So a lot of the openings the frames are getting completed and tidied up and ready to start to receive windows storefront as we march towards, kind of enclosing and weather tightening the building to get ready for a lot of the fit out that's going to happen throughout the winter months. And then just a suggested next meeting for Monday, September 14th for just one more milestone. This second page is, a little bit of, we're trying to evolve this really every month to kind of make sure that we're giving the team a good snapshot of where we stand now that we have the GMP approved. So this is a little bit more layers of detail than what we saw last month, but really trying to give you the same information. So what we'll see on a monthly basis is 3 kind of major blocks of allocation of dollars that are either in your project budget or in the GMP. The first is the owner contingency. And when we look at the budget, these numbers tie to that. We have a total owner's contingency of $6.7 million. That is the owner's money to spend. That's whether it's on change orders coming out of the construction process or other items that the owner may add. What we see here is, and these numbers are a bit in transition. What we're trying to do is reflect the changes that we know to date that have been approved by the procurement working group. That's that 98,838 number. But until we receive those changes in an official change order, the contract value will not change. So what we're trying to do is give a real-time snapshot of kind of what we've committed as well as what's under review to get you to this total number, and then what the resulting math will be on that. There's always going to be a little bit of inconsistency because the change orders will kind of lag behind the ATPs. But we think this gives you a good snapshot of kind of where we are as we're starting to expend those additional dollars. Construction contingency, on the other hand, is inside of the overall GMP. So that's the number that is owned in Gilbane's contract. You'll see here that $2.6 million is what's held. So far, we've approved just over $3,000 worth of changes that are considered in scope. So what we do on a almost a daily basis, Eric and AI3 work through all the changes that come through. We have some good debates about what's in scope versus what's out of scope. Once we decide on where it sits, then the AI3 does a thorough review with their team to determine the validity of the change as well as appropriateness of cost. We do a parallel review of that, and then we sit with Gilbane and work through those. And that's what's reflected there. And then the third bucket is the owner allowances. So again, these are built into the overall GMP. You'll see the $4.9 million total. And approved to date is 232,000, just right, 232.5. A lot of those are actually expended even before we finished the GMP. So a lot of this winter conditions, abatement activities that were happening with the pool building, and then you have a long running list. We have about a 42-page report that Gilbane issues every week. And then we check against the requisition on a monthly basis to ensure that those allowances are in fact in alignment with the contract, as well as alignment with activities that we know are happening out on site. And if they're not, then we have that conversation with the Gilbane team. And then within that number is the COVID $1 million allowance. We have not had any expenditures submitted as of yet. And we have a requisition that we just went through approval on for July, which also didn't include it. We expect that there will be some submitted costs for the month of August. So once we see that, we'll have a better understanding of where that's tracking, and then we'll go through that same level of rigor that we do on every other allowance expenditure that's included in the total project cost.
Hey, Sam,
Yes, sir.
is it possible to add to this just a simple bar graph for each of those 3 categories on a month-by-month basis, just basically showing where the balance was for each month? And we can set that date as of the date that this report is presented to the building committee, just so we can track the balances over time and see if, immediately see if we're, burning hot or whatever.
So you want to see a monthly, Nate? So we're just saying like a monthly bar graph, kind of what the previous month was or the trailing months?
Yeah, just like an XY, right? With a bar on each month with, this is where we were at the August meeting. This is where we are at the September meeting. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Next page. So I'm actually going to use the pictures to kind of walk us through this document. And I know it can be hard for folks to read, but right now we've got, and this is relatively consistent with last month, we've got about 14 trades on site, significant work happening across all aspects of the project completion, site work, major utility work happening, major earthwork. You can see, well, this is a picture of the halftime building up here. Significant amount of earthwork happening in kind of the back third of the property. So from the building back to the eastern property line. Setting parking lot grades, setting major underground utilities, National Grid and Di Gregorio have set the new telephone poles to come in. The major underlying conduits from those poles have been set, at least to get us out to the building. And that work will continue as they sweep around to the transformer that's going to sit on the back of the site. From that transformer, the power distribution will then go to the halftime building and into the main building. Gas as well has come in off of the main street. And all this is to enable basically the new construction access road that'll happen on the southernmost side of the site. So if folks have been out there recently, we've got that hard line of the kind of the construction fence and the barriers that's on the south end of the parking lot. They're working just inside on the other side of that with the utility corridor so that then they can pave and be ready for that kind of traffic to alter once school opens. Major work on the building. The roof is about 95% complete on the top as far as getting all of the EPD or the cover down. They're still doing some work around it, but a large majority of that is up there. I was up there this morning. Most of the building interior concrete work is done. All the major slabs have been poured, including even all the way around the walking track. I know, Gene, I think you were out last week. I know there was a group that was out 2 weeks ago, but you can
I was out Thursday. Yeah, last Thursday.
So you can really start to kind of feel how the two gyms and the walking track are going to really feel, because that space is now really kind of completely enclosed with that walking track around. The auditorium, all the rake for all the seating is in place. So you really start to get a sense of scale of some of these spaces. Interior framing, as you can see in some of these pictures here, is happening on all floors, just about all zones except for zone 4. On floors 3 and 4 as they're wrapping up their spray fireproofing down on that end. So you're really starting to see all not only the major breakdowns of space, but also the individual breakdowns of classrooms and kind of those individual CTC components that are all starting really to take shape. So if folks haven't been out there, I know Eric's still hosting those recurring walkthroughs. And if you really want to get a feel for how things are going on out there, I really encourage everybody to go out there and take a look. And then finally, the exterior is really starting to take shape. So we're about probably 75, 80% done on the air vapor barrier, which is the kind of the barrier seeing up on all the exterior framing and sheathing. And now what we're also starting to see, and I'm going to try to zoom in here, although it might not come in perfectly, is the siding, the stone, the manufactured stone siding that's happening in the lower course. And then what we're seeing is the hardy plank on some of the upper floors and the hardy paneling that's happening on some of those upper floors. They're really starting to get a feel for kind of the aesthetic of that exterior that, we spent a lot of time on. We balanced a lot of the value propositions of the different materials, and you're really starting to get a sense of how all these components are coming together. And I think they look really good. I mean, it's hard to kind of building of this scale come together and stitch together. So it's going to be interesting to see that start to come around. And then I just showed on the previous slide, the halftime building, that work is moving ahead pretty quickly. You can see the walls coming vertical out of the ground, kind of almost in parallel to what's happening in the building. And that's moving along. What you still see to the north of the halftime building is the field, the stadium field has not started to take shape. And that's going to take a lot longer. You know, that turf probably won't be going down until sometime in the spring. So that area is going to continue to go through kind of its stockpile area so that they can be moving material around throughout the property as they work through all the sequencing out there. So, you know, month to month, we're starting to see things not change quite as much, you know, when you kind of look at these perspective photos. But again, if you walk out there, you can really get a sense of how things are shaping up. And then finally, I just want to spend a few extra minutes on the budget tonight. So what we talked about last month is we're going to start to see kind of these shifting dollars. So last month, what you saw was the initial shift from the savings that were realized at the GMP that moved into the contingency. So at that time, the contingency was at last month's update, we were at 6.7, which is reflected in the chart that's in the previous pages. What we've done this month is done the carve out of the demolition contingency that we talked about. So we knew with some of those savings, we were going to do a line where we dedicated that $1 million. It was the savings specifically in that demo and abatement contract and put it into its own line item, at least as a way to kind of understand that it's got a place in the budget and that we'll hold it there as we start to go through the evaluation. Doesn't mean that it'll all stay there. And, you know, I know Gene, we talked about before, it's unfortunately the abatement happened so late. You've set aside this money, you know, is there an opportunity where that might be missed because you're kind of holding onto that line item? I think that's something we're going to have to continue to evaluate as we look at this, the 5.7 number. As we start to consume those dollars, do we continue to hold the $1 million, or do we kind of make some strategic decisions around that as we're going, you know, as the building's really starting to fit out and we're seeing those changes that we know are going to happen. The other major change, and it's really just a catch up, is AI3 has had, I think, 3 amendments in the past probably 120 days. So what you'll see here, and those have all been approved, including most recently the surveying work for the work out in Pawtucket Avenue. So this is really just a catch up to get their contract total in alignment with those changes. We wanted to wait until after the GMP was in place, just so that we didn't have all these moving parts ahead of time. So what you'll see there is, since that is a soft cost increase of 57,222, what we have is a decrease in the soft cost contingency down below of 5722 or 222, and that's the reflective number down below here. What you'll see down in the bottom line is that these numbers don't change. So this is the number we've been kind of holding for over a year, the 189,474, just slightly under the 189.5, which is your total bonded amount. So you know, conceptually, the bottom line doesn't change, but this middle column will be where you'll have those adjustments that happen on a recurring basis. And we should expect that we'll see adjustments to, you know, reductions in owner's contingency and increases in the GMP as changes occur. It'll start happening we will have a monthly recurrence of that occur, you know, happening throughout the process. And this will be that ability to track that in this. We have a separate log where we're going to be tracking all those by month. But this is kind of the roll up so everybody can understand where we are, snapshot in time.
And so the 10,000 foot view picture is, should anyone ask, the savings we anticipate by way of the approved GMP are basically now all allocated to contingency. Correct.
Yep. And alternates that are still kind of making their way through the approval process, Nate.
Yep.
So and some of the ATPs that I reflected in the previous page are actually some of the alts as well. So those will come through as an ATP, and then they'll look to that contingency line item as the source.
Okay.
That's the conclusion for our report tonight. Happy to answer any questions, and then we can flip over to Jim.
Sam, I have one question.
Yep.
As of last Thursday, when I was out there and walking with Eric, we've got approximately 200 tradespeople on the job now. Can you find out, because I'm sure you don't know off the top of your head, how long it takes them to go through the screening for the COVID every morning? With
Yep. So
with the
they
sole
are
purpose-
initiating that new protocol, I think, this week. So we'll be able to get a better sense of that, Gene, to see kind of what that cycle is looking like.
Right, for the sole, and the purpose of me asking is to see the amount of time of productivity we're losing on a daily basis because of COVID. Because I assume they're not starting to come through until 7 o'clock or whatever time the work is starting. I don't believe they're coming through early, right?
Yeah, I mean, I recall a reference to that they were asked to be. I don't want to be making up something I didn't hear, but I thought that they were asking them to show up ahead of time and be through the screening by the start of work time. Now, whether that's happening in practice, I'm not sure. So let me work with Eric on that to see not only what time are they showing up, but then what is that duration to kind of get through the queue.
Right. Because that's something you might be interested in, Eric, down the road.
You asking Eric a question? Eric's not here.
Not Eric.
Oh.
I don't know why I call Craig Eric all the time. That's something you might be interested in.
We could all just start calling Craig Eric. If that makes it easier for you, Gene.
It would make it easier for me.
Yeah. Hey, I'll be younger. It's all right.
No, you see what I'm saying is, like I said, if it's taking 15 minutes every day, or if it's taking a half an hour every day, there might be something we can recoup later on if we deem it necessary.
Can we skip back to the photos just about a page or two real quick?
Which page? This page?
That's right there. That one is good. Just so based on what we're looking at now, understanding that there's an extent to which we have to get the exterior of this building buttoned up before weather starts to set in. Do we have any concerns given the current schedule that we're going to run into weather before we start? We have it sealed up.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I'll say, Nate, is it's always imperfect. You'll have some windows in, you may not have them all in. Weather can come tomorrow, or it can come in December. So, I think what they're trying to do, and I think the zones also help. So, we have very different conditions from the south to the north. So as you work from this end to this end, you're much tighter on the south end and then as you work to the north, you're more porous. So, we're confident that the team is going to, use the means and methods that they do on every project to ensure that as they are introducing those elements that are susceptible to weather, that they're putting the proper kind of envelope conditions in place. It is imperfect. It's always kind of a moving target, especially with the uncertainty of kind of how weather acts, at the end of the summer season, into the fall season. But they are tracking to be on schedule to get in closed when they originally said they were going to, which allows them to kind of get to the work of the interior finishes again in those zones and even by floor, depending on which zone you're in.
We have a substantial amount of last year's winter conditions flowing into this year, don't we? I mean, as far as budget goes, because we didn't really use a whole lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at that allowance utilization, though, so, I would say there was a large chunk in there, but yeah, we still have. I'd have to check it against the total available because the report we have is 42 pages, so it's got it all kind of broken out line by line. But I don't think we saw an alarming utilization of winter conditions last year.
Okay.
Sam, could you explain when an expense that's not budgeted comes in, what determines whether it goes to contingency or allowance?
So allowances are predetermined kind of buckets of money within the Gilbane contract that are there because they're undetermined amounts. And a great example is kind of with the abatement. So they run into an unforeseen amount of asbestos, in the walls of the pool building. So the allowances are there to act as a kind of a catch for that type of activity, but they're only up to a certain amount. So if we exceed the allowance, then the CM is still entitled to additional compensation. But they're there so that you're not going through a change order every time you run into, say, one of those conditions. A change is either one of two things. It's an owner change, or it's a change by Gilbane because their sub missed it in the scope. So if there is a missed item or an unforeseen condition on the site that wasn't picked up, Gilbane is entitled to a change order for that. And again, there's a heavy level of scrutiny that goes through that before we decide that that is the case. So that would go to owner contingency. And then if there is a missed buy by the CM or other similar activities like that, then those would fall as an in scope, and they would go against their construction contingency line item that we have. I'm just going to scroll up here, Manny, in that 2.672 number right there. So we go through a pretty rigorous review. Jim and his team, Darren, who's the on-site principal that works on the project out in the field, Eric, and then AI3's subs go through and make sure, okay, the sub is saying that, this wasn't on the drawings. The entire team goes and reviews to either validate that or push back on that. If it is in fact not on the drawings, then we go through that process of understanding what the ask is or what the change is being requested. And then we validate the cost, and then it moves through as an ATP and ultimately as a change order. So it's a pretty exhaustive process where we're going through multiple layers before it actually gets before, say, an approval step with the subcommittee or the working group.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Sam.
And even then, we may question it, right, Sam?
Yeah. It's fluid and filled with debate, and we haven't even started yet. So it's gonna, we'll get into it more and more in the coming months as the trades are realizing either they missed something or there's something that's not truing up. When you start going vertical and horizontal with all these elements in the building. Any other questions?
All right, hearing none. Thank you, Sam. Let's go ahead and move on to the next item. That would be the green sustainability initiatives. Is Jim going to give this presentation?
Yeah.
Yes, I will, Chairman Cahoon.
Can I ask one
Go
question
ahead.
before you start? Can
Yep.
you explain what the, because I think I understand, but at the very beginning, we were talking about the EIU number, the site number, and the source number. Could you basically explain to everybody what the difference is between those two?
Yes, absolutely. And Ben, would you be able to share the screen? I'll just put that document up in case everybody does not have it with them.
Yeah.
Or if you want to do that, Sam, that's fine too.
Yep. Give me 2 seconds. All right. Can everybody see AI3's memo up?
Yep.
Great. All right, Jim. So Jim, I'll scroll as you need.
Great. Yeah, to answer your question, Nate, the source energy or site energy is a combination of primary and secondary energy that you buy directly from your building. So that's the site one, and the source one is the sum of the primary and secondary energy used, the consumption of it. It gets, it is a little bit confusing. This is terminology that our energy consultant uses quite regularly with with NGrid and the utility companies. And it's based on kilowatt BTU hours per square foot per year usage for these categories. So there's two different numbers, site EUI and source EUI, that they evaluate the efficiencies of buildings on. And also the EPA or Energy Star rating, that's part of the EPA program, looks at site EUI and source EUI to generate their rating for your building, which can range from anywhere from 1 to 100 as the maximum most efficient building you could design. And for East Providence High School, we're right at about 86, which means on a national level, your high school is 86% better or more energy efficient than than other buildings in its category on a national scale. So that's pretty good. That's an awesome rating to have. But getting, so Sam and Eric asked us to put together kind of a brief summary of some of the key points and sustainable design features that were included in the project. And I kind of wanted to also identify the process that we've gone through, because it has been a very involved and comprehensive process that involved not only us as the design team leader, but also specific consultants that we brought into the project from day one. We had, as I mentioned, A&L Engineering working closely with us and our engineers, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and also working directly with the utility company, NGrid Gas and Electric, to ensure that at every step of the project, we were meeting the target goals that we identified in our early kickoff meeting with stakeholders. We called it that kickoff energy charrette, as we outline in item number 1 here in this spreadsheet. So A&L Engineering was really taking the lead on this, and in every phase of the project, they evaluated our specifications and drawings to make sure we were in compliance, not only with Northeast CHIP standards, but also the standards and goals that we set very early on in that February 21st, 2019 meeting with all the stakeholders and the utility grid representatives there. We also had another very important consultant as part of the design team. They're continuing to work with us. They're really identifying and focusing on Northeast CHIPS compliance, which is a major compliance factor that we have to ensure with the Rhode Island Department of Education. If you recall, they give the project 2% to 4% incentive points if you're in compliance with Northeast CHIPS to make sure the school is designed as a green school. So we brought in DNVGL, John Amber, who's also an architect. They're based in San Diego. And again, they were assisting us in putting together all the documentation that's in the construction documents so that Gilbane knows what items are important, what prerequisites are required, and what goals we set for the project to be as energy efficient as possible. Right now, we're on track to receive that 2% reimbursement from RIDE because of our energy efficiency goals that we met in the project. And finally, working together with us was our acoustical engineer, Centec, and they went out to the project before any construction started and did base readings of the site. So we know that we can't exceed those baseline readings. So that information was given to our mechanical engineer. So any kind of rooftop units that we put on the roof, any kind of noise that's generated on the site from equipment or mechanical equipment, has to make sure that it comes in below that baseline reading or at that baseline reading when the project was started. So that was an important feature. And also, they design a lot of our interior spaces with us, and they make a lot of recommendations. If you know, we have a lot of vocational programs in the schools, so we got to make sure that that noise stays within those areas and doesn't leak out into other sensitive areas like the library and media center or an adjacent classroom. So we had some really tight requirements that we had to meet to make sure that, again, we were meeting the Northeast CHIPS acoustical requirements that are required by RIDE. So in a nutshell, some of the key features that everybody should be very proud of, I know we are as a design team, we had a very tight budget on this project, and you recall all the pain that everybody has gone through to identify value engineering items at each phase of the project to keep bringing the project in on budget. That was paramount for everything. So we tried to pack in as much sustainable and green features into the project as we could. And we're proud to announce that as a whole, right now, with 100% of the documents completed and the final energy report, I guess you could call it, completed by A&L Engineering, that we received about 35.6 source energy savings for the project. That equates to about 32.9% of total cost savings, energy cost savings for the project. And again, we have an 86 Energy Star rating out of a possible 100. So the building is very energy efficient, and everybody should be very proud of that. As I mentioned in item number 1, we had that kickoff energy charrette meeting with stakeholders at the Martin Middle School back in February of 2019. At that point, all the professionals involved in the room, I know Tony and a lot of his staff was there as well, we identified a realistic goal, but it was definitely an aggressive goal to set the energy charrette, the site EUI at 40 and the source EUI at 95. Based on the final 100% energy model done on the project, now that the design is finished, we came in at 38 for the site EUI, and the source EUI is 88. So we're well under target of where we want it to be, and that's great news. Whenever we talk about energy savings, cost savings, the building is always compared to a baseline building that's designed at the same square footage to meet the current energy code and building code. So that's always your baseline. Energy efficiency comes and is realized when you exceed that baseline benchmark. So that's an important factor. We're not designing to very old codes or any arbitrary number. We have to have a building that's designed to meet current building code and energy code, and then exceed that by, in this case, 30% minimum to have superior energy performance, as what Northeast CHIPS is dictating for us to meet that 2% reimbursement, additional reimbursement from RIDE. So that was always the minimum target we wanted to get to above and beyond energy code compliance. And if you look at that last line in that chart above, the first chart, the baseline school site EUI would be 58 and the source EUI would be 137. And again, we're at 38 and 88 respectively for that. So that's a tremendous accomplishment and for the budget that we had for the project. So what does that all mean, and where are these energy savings realized? Well, I put together this quick chart for you. Item number 2, the major difference between an as-designed building of this size for a high school population to meet code and baseline building designs. So for instance, if you look at the building envelope in the first item, not to go over all these in too much detail, but a very simple one that we always look to is what we've done for the roof assembly. Not only the insulation, but the entire assembly from the metal deck to the outside PVC membrane. That is an R39.2 value, which is far above what's required by code. And again, all these items are modeled with A&L Engineering to say, okay, if you keep putting in more insulation, at some point that energy efficiency and cost savings feature doesn't become as great of an energy saving feature, or it's not really worth the money you're investing. So there's a fine line between how much do you do and how far and above and beyond code do you really push this thing and really realize that extra money you're putting into the project. We also ran numbers on triple glazed windows, and we realized that the cost impact of the project was too great for the energy efficiency trade-off. So that was taken off. I didn't put it in the chart here. I just showed you the ones that we put into the project. So the thermal roof performance, the U value, which is the thermal resistance of that entire assembly for a baseline building, is 0.039 U value. The idea behind U value is the closer to zero you get, the more ideal the assembly becomes and energy efficient the building assembly becomes. We actually realized a 0.024 U value for the thermal roof performance. Same is true of the exterior walls above grade, 0.064 for a baseline. We were better than that, closer to zero at 0.054, for instance. All these things, fenestration, the kinds of storefronts, curtain walls, regular operable windows, we were better than code, but not too aggressive. Our windows are double glazed with argon gas filled, And that we found was the most cost-effective feature to beat code and to become more energy efficiency. All of our HVAC airside systems are variable air volume systems, which mean they modulate according to occupancy. And what we've done is we put CO2 sensors in each of the occupied classrooms so that as more people are occupied, more CO2 is given off. These smart VAV boxes in the ceilings kind of sense that increase in CO2 and ramp up to give you more fresh air in the space. And as students leave, for instance, it ramps down and scales down the speed of those boxes to become more energy efficiency. And we realize energy savings by doing that. Unit cooling in your residential units, you could get a SEER rating as high as 23, 24 for some really energy efficiency air compressors for your home air conditioning. Code 13 SEER is the rating that we have to meet. We've done 15.2 to 18.8 SEER rating on a lot of the units to realize more energy savings there. Let's see, a handful of other items. Pumps and controls. Baseline is constant speed pumps. When they're on, they're on. There is no variable to those. We use all variable speed. For your residential pool, for instance, if you use a variable speed pump instead of a constant pump, you could realize savings of 50 to 75% more energy efficiency by just using one variable speed pump if you're trying to heat or move water around in your pool and your own house. Boiler efficiency, baseline is 80%. We're at 96% boiler efficiency. The second page, Sam, we have condensing gas-fired water heaters, and baseline is gas-fired water heaters. The condensing gas-fired water heaters are much more energy efficient because they use heat that's exhausted through the flue, recaptures that instead of using preheated building air. It's actually using the heat that's going to be exhausted to the exterior through the flue gas, captures that, and creates more energy efficiency that way. Our equipment efficiency, 80% is the baseline. We always try and target 94 to 96% for all the equipment that we specify for the project. And it goes without saying, daylight dimming controls are a standard in all of our projects for all classrooms, offices, media center, etc. And one thing we're really proud of is the light power density, not compromising the amount of daylight in schools, as well as the artificial lighting that we give each classroom. The watts per square foot used to be well over 1. Back about 10 years ago, you could get like 3 or 4 watts per square foot, but that has dropped down to 1.2 for code. We're at 0.36 watts per square foot. All the lighting we're using inside and outside of the building, including the parking lot, is all LED right now. And it's and that's a sign of how much daylight you're getting into this new building. So we could drop that artificial lighting requirement to 0.36 and still meet the requirements of code for what students need at their desk to learn. So those are all some of the features that we incorporate to realize those savings that I mentioned earlier. There's a number of energy efficiency measures incorporated into the building design. Like I mentioned, the building envelope enhancements, increased wall insulation surpassing code, as well as the roof insulation. I mentioned the CO2 sensor-based resetting of the VAV boxes in all learning spaces. High efficiency interior lighting systems. Everything is LEDs, including the stage lighting and exterior parking lot lighting. We're capturing exhaust air energy recovery above code minimum. The condensing hot water gas-fired boilers, as well as water heaters. High efficiency exterior and interior lighting systems. And also the roof is designed for you to place on top of that roof through a third-party vendor, tilt up ballasted photovoltaic panels. So we increase the structure to carry that load, and we design the roof and also some of the interior conduits so that it can be funneled to zones where you can terminate those PV panels in the future. We didn't have the money in the project to kind of come up with $5 million to populate roughly 195,000 square feet of roof area with PV panels, which could have got you down close to or about net zero. But if there is funding for that in the future, your building could have a tremendous impact and boost and get close to zero net energy actually. And then finally, Northeast CHIPS compliance was a huge part of the project. That was something that we had major discussions with Gilbane, Sam and his team early in the design phase project. It's something we visited at every VE session that we had at all the major milestones of the project. We knew there were certain features that we had to protect, that we had to keep within the project, all the prerequisites that are required by Northeast CHIPS and are recognized as the compliance source for all RIDE school projects. We had to make sure we didn't value engineer any of those sensitive items out. And in the end, the building is meeting the energy efficiency, which is a minimum of 30% above Rhode Island Building Energy Code. So it's categorized as superior energy performance for your high school, as well as the water efficiency. We have a 20% reduction in potable water usage for sewage conveyance, which is fantastic. And we're in compliance with all the Northeast CHIPS prerequisites in version 3.1. So in a nutshell, the minimum score that you needed for Northeast CHIPS was 110. You're tracking right now as of May 6th at 156 points, with one more possible point that could shift to the yes column to make it 157 points. And at this point in the process, we've ruled out about 93 points that either we don't have the budget to incorporate into the project, or it would just be too complex to get those items into the project for the energy savings. So out of a possible 250 points, we're at 156, and we're just a handful shy of having one of the highest ratings you could have for Northeast CHIPS. But again, you have a very, very energy efficient building. It's something the whole city should be very proud of. And I think it will definitely become a benchmark for future school projects in the state of Rhode Island once your program ramps up in the near future. And also, this project is right in line with a lot of the other high energy performing projects we designed in Massachusetts quite extensively. So you should be very proud of the product you have here. It's something that I think a number of communities in Massachusetts will be very envious of when they hear about this project and what you accomplished here as a team. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
I'm talking to mute. I'm sorry. And make a statement if I can. You know, Jim, I haven't had a lot of experience with construction projects. I have had a lot of experience with, you know, techie things, right? When you start talking about security and energy efficiency and things like hardware engineering, just like you said, right? There's like that asymptote whereby you can continue to throw money into the effort, but the amount that you realize gets smaller and smaller. So what you're showing me, just looking at the numbers, right, as a layperson, what I can see is you guys have really collectively identified that spot at which, you know, further expenditure is not going to get us any closer to the promised land. So right. Great job there. The other thing is, I think you should know, Jim, I've worked with, I don't know, 1,000, 10,000 contractors in my life. I've never seen anybody that's as energized and interested in the effort that they're doing as you are. So when you're communicating to us, like, you know, all the work that, even when we're talking about something that's, whether it's very technical or something that is easy for a layperson to understand, it's clear to us, or it's clear to me anyway, that you not only understand it, but you have a real passion for the work that you're doing, and you're trying to get the best possible results. So I thank you very much for that.
Well, I thank you, Nate. That's very kind words from you. And you know, it is a passion of ours at AI3. We don't talk a lot about energy efficiency, and on this project we had a number of complicated things that we had to, as a design team and in collaboration with the owner and OPM and you as a committee, to overcome. And sometimes the really cool stuff, in our opinion, like this energy efficiency things, kind of aren't talked about too much. But I wanted to reassure everybody that this was a top priority from day one. And that energy charrette that we had back almost 18 months ago, which isn't that long ago, actually, really set the tone for where we wanted to be as a project. And I think if you were to talk with anybody, Denise or Jerry over at Engrid, you guys are getting a rebate of almost $390,000 for this project, which is a signal of how much energy efficiency you incorporated into the project. And the lighting design alone is fantastic. It's simple. It's not overly complex. Everything is LED. You won't be replacing bulbs on a daily, a weekly or monthly basis. They're really long-term, good quality fixtures. And, one of the largest Engrid rebates I've been a part of, and this was almost 17 years ago, the Whitman-Hanson Regional High School project was just over $500,000. And they really wanted us to pack in a ton of energy efficiency features into the project at that point in time. A lot of things have changed then. A lot of the rebates have become more restrictive and more difficult to get. So for you guys to come up close to $400,000 is really saying a lot. And it's been an exciting process, and we wanted to make sure it was a complete success, which is why we brought in a couple of specialists, one as far out as San Diego, DNVGL, who's really a specialist out there. And California, Nate, they're way ahead of the curve when you compare them to New England sometimes. They're really out there on the cutting edge of things. So we wanted to bring that knowledge to this project to make sure we were capturing everything that was possible for you. And I hate to say it, but the budget is very complicated on this project, and it was restrictive. It was a known entity from day one. So the challenge for us was to pack in as much as possible without going too far over, and making sure it was a realistic goal for you. And it was also systems that are not overly complex to maintain, which is another thing a lot of people forget about doing. So I appreciate your kind words, and it's been a fun process for us. And I'm pretty excited about it. You guys are going to have a great building, a great energy efficiency building, and be happy to talk more about it. You could see I'm kind of geeked up about it.
I think Kathy and Sam will remember how much work we did when we put together the solicitation for the architect's proposals, how much work we put into communicating how important this was to us.
Yeah.
And Kathy and I, we don't really know a whole heck of a lot about it, right? So, relying on Sam a lot to communicate that message. So seeing that message came through, I mean, that's, when you're a procurement nerd, that's what you want to see. Message received and performed. So thank you.
You're welcome. Appreciate that.
Are there any other questions? Can I throw one out there? And this is really out of left field. So talking about the PEV, the potential for PEV in the future. I've recently seen, there's this one company who actually, they propositioned the mayor, they're actually working with Bank of America, and they don't use PEV, but they use these mini wind turbines that are anywhere from 6 feet high to 10 feet high. And they're supposedly super efficient. So, I mean, I look at, I'm not saying that's a direction that we necessarily want to go on, but as you see this technology evolving, maybe we think about in the future, all right, we didn't put the PEV cells up there, but now maybe we have an opportunity to grab this other thing that's new and hot and is available via grants, et cetera, et cetera. So, Kathy, I don't know if you've heard about that at all. I do think that the Bank of America building is going to do it down here on Pawtucket Avenue, and I'll be keeping a close eye on that. But if that looks like it's having results, I think the city is going to be very interested in putting those units in too. And they're fairly inexpensive. I think the guy said they cost somewhere on the order of 24 or 25K per. So just, food for thought. That's something that maybe we can achieve down the line.
No, that's one thing I haven't heard about yet from the mayor.
Okay. I'll keep an eye on that. I'll let you know if anything good comes out of it.
And Nate, I think just as a reminder, like Jim said, PV is still an option. You are PV ready, which is the NE chips requirement. So you've got the structure to support the array. You've got raceways through the deck to get you down to the electrical rooms. So there's certainly an opportunity for you guys to think about rooftop or other options on the property. And we brought it up in our smaller working group about just the timing of that and thinking through, if it is even something that the community wants to entertain, better to start to make those decisions now, just while you're under construction, as opposed to say, after delivery.
Right. And I know, we've had different entities approach us in the past about, putting stuff up on the existing building. And for any number of reasons, we said no. Not the least of which was we didn't know if the existing building would stand up to it. But knowing that that's not an issue anymore. And as we get further down the road and start looking at some of the contingency budget, et cetera, maybe that's something we can maybe think about doing. Don't know. Just throwing it out there. Food for thought.
Nate, definitely keep us in mind when you go down that road. We'd be anxious to help you out in getting a good company involved. And we worked with Amoresco in Massachusetts. They do that a lot. But one of the key things to remember is how they're giving you the energy back and what kind of credits are they giving you back. You want to make sure that you could take advantage of that as a district and not just lease them your roof space and not get anything in return. So that's always a fine line on the projects that we deal with third-party vendors. One thing we also did that I didn't mention was we went ahead and did a zero net energy analysis of your facility early in the design phase when we knew what kind of systems we were going to place in your school. What would it take to get you close to zero net energy, and how much PV and how much roof area and how much solar canopies in the parking lots would it take to get you close to that? So that's an analysis we have. I'd probably like to revisit it one more time with our consultants to make sure all the numbers are accurate, because it's about 8 to 9 months old at this point, to make sure we have the most up-to-date data in the report. That'd be something I'd be happy to share with you, so you have an idea of what size system you need so you could reach that goal.
So do we have, and Sam, you talked about this, and Gene certainly talked about it a couple of meetings ago, as we get further into the project, as we realize savings, and I think we all have the same goal here, right? I think every one of us wants to squeeze every bit of building that we can out of the available resources, right? Versus coming to the end of this with a whole bunch of money left over. Do we have anywhere a wish list bucket that we can just start compiling things, not alternatives, nothing priced, just a simple set of notes that like, hey, when we start to look at some things that we can do, maybe there are some kind of, just kind of out there ideas. Like, so I would throw the PV cells into that bucket, for example.
Yeah, Nate, we don't have that, but we certainly can start it, and again, it can be kind of notional right now, right, about ideas. And then as you guys are going through the evolution of the project budget and hopefully continued kind of, conservative use of the contingency, but we will use it. Then you could start to make those, or at least really start to say, okay, is it worth now going and say pricing an item, whether it's PV or something else? As it's starting to kind of crystallize more and more, and we'll push back also in protection of the contingency to make sure that we're hopefully reserving enough for those unforeseens and unknowns that we know will also come later.
And hopefully through that push and pull, we'll come up with the optimal building.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Right. I recall we had the discussion of the solar canopies over a year ago. Because I brought it up due to the fact that BCC has a parking lot that is enclosed with solar canopies. Jim, which is the least expensive way to go, rooftop or a solar canopy?
I think it's definitely rooftop.
I'll clarify. Ground mount, least expensive, Manny, then rooftop, then canopies.
Okay.
You don't have a lot of opportunity for a ground mount here just because you don't have
the land. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have any spare site square footage.
Mm-hmm.
Canopies are a trend you're seeing. They are definitely the most expensive, and probably the things that require even more sensitive design analysis from a wind standpoint, from where do you put them? How do you deal with plowing? How do you know, all those kind of things.
All
that
those
happen.
things, yeah.
But I know Jim and the Traverse team have done them on a few other schools in Mass as well. So
They make for a very popular parking area because they're out of the weather
Protected.
when you're underneath them.
yeah, and it
Yeah.
gives it a little bit of cover, right?
Yeah,
It does have its challenges with security, parking lot securities. You need to add in more site security cameras under the canopy and additional lighting under the
Mhm.
canopies. So,
yeah.
but people do like parking under them because, you know, their car doesn't get snow on it or rain on it. So it's a nice feature, but they are expensive, as Sam said. Rooftop is definitely least expensive, and you don't have the land out there to put them on the ground.
Manny, I do know that the Office of Energy Resources, which is the state level office that oversees all energy renewable, they this year have introduced canopies at least as a kind of a pilot program within the renewable energy program that's available. Part of that is to see kind of what is the break point on cost, because it is kind of an upside down math equation when you look at the cost to produce that versus say a rooftop or a site like a brownfield or something like that. But they are talking about it, and Mass has been doing it for a while.
Yeah. And Nate, as I'm sure you're aware, that site is windy. I've never been on that backfield when it wasn't a windy day. Just constant wind. And if we could harness some of that power, that would be a win-win.
Oh, we'll put it on the wish list. So, are there any additional questions about that portion of the agenda? All right, well, I think we'll say thank you very much to Jim. I think, Jim, you're free to stick around if you want, or, go back to your life. What life you have that's not East Providence High School. And we thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is consider and vote to approve invoices for services. We have 4 invoices. Is that right?
We've got a few. Mind if I read them off, Nate?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So for the month of July 2020, AI3 basic services, $122,474.84. AI3 extra services, $19,544.80. AI3 reimbursable services, $4,426.06. Gilbane Building Company, $8,038,414.97. Peregrine Group LLC, $59,000. Filch Engineering, $28,052.50. And finally, Stephen Turner Inc., $5,851.28, for a grand total for the month of July 2020, $8,277,764.45.
So if there's discussion, great. If there's no discussion, Chair will take a motion to approve the invoices as read.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from, I believe, Superintendent Crowley and a second from Mr. Venus. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Vote present on Gilbane's invoice.
I'm sorry, Gene, say
What?
again.
I said I vote present on Gilbane's invoice.
Okay.
Do you have that, Sharon? Gene, do you have something there that you want to discuss, or?
No, this how I've been voting since day one on Gilbane.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I missed that. My fault.
It's because
I
of
have
my 30 years with the company.
That is fair. Thank you. I haven't noticed that at any meeting. I'm sorry. Thanks. One quick question for Sam. He's on mute.
Yep. Yes, sir.
All right. Sam, can I interpret anything from the expenditure pattern, specifically on Gilbane's invoice? I noticed we kept going up until last month, and this one's a little bit lower than last month. Am I reading into that? Or have we hit a peak, or do we not know?
No, I think what you had was, I think there was, as we were getting to GMP, we were probably a little bit under what their projections were. And I think that was probably just a little bit of a reflection of getting the subs in, getting those RTAs approved. Now we're kind of starting to really hit our stride with, you've seen that jump up into the north of 8 million on a monthly basis. And I think we're going to continue to see that clip for a while. And it's indicative of the workforce that's out there, right? So, Gene said we're going to be starting to peak up in that 180 to 200 range, probably into the fall. And the more people, the more you're going to see that number kind of continue to chug along.
And are we continuing to have the cash flow meeting with the city? Malcolm, the mayor, is that taking place? Okay.
Yep. Actually, Craig just reminded me, and I was thinking the same thing as I was sitting there scheduling it, that we're actually going to schedule this Wednesday's right after this meeting.
Okay. All right, so that takes us to the invoice. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the July 13th minutes. So if there are no questions, Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the 13 July meeting.
So moved.
Second.
A motion from Superintendent Kelly. I have a second from Mr. Fiola. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so unanimous pass. So then we set the next meeting date, and I saw that in the OPM report. I forget what you had identified, Sam. What was it?
The 14th of September, which is that second Monday.
14 September?
Yep.
Kathy, since Joel is not here tonight, you guys are meeting tomorrow, right? The school committee is meeting tomorrow?
That's correct.
So I won't be able to attend that in Joel's stead because we have another meeting. The council has a meeting. Are you good to go with regard to the building report to the school committee?
Joel will be there.
Oh, he will? I just figured he wouldn't be there.
No, he's flying in at 6:10. He'll be
Oh,
there.
okay.
Yeah, but I will, fill him in. Or Tony, we'll fill him in.
Okay. All right. I think that coming out of this meeting, I mean, some of those key highlights, right, of, moving the savings or the identified savings to the contingency pile, if you will, realized real energy savings that, right? I mean, I think that's something that people can really sink their teeth into. Tony, I don't know if it's possible for you to have a WAG, but do you know proportionally or percentage wise how much of the district's energy the high school currently eats up? I mean, is that thing 30%, 40% of our bill, or?
Greg may have that, but I think it's even higher than that.
Because that'll be something that people will immediately take.
Yeah.
The incentives aside, the fact that you're getting a building that we've now shown is that much more efficient versus just saying it, which is what we've been saying all along, I think is a key that you guys are. That's what I'd highlight if I was there. Just saying. All right, so we set the next date, 14 September. We'll do that at 6:30.
Yeah.
Okay, 6:30. We'll plan to meet virtually unless the world changes between now and then. So with that said, entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All right,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Have a good night, everyone. Thank
Well,
you.
Good night, Kat.
Thanks. Good night.
Bye. Good
Excuse
night.
me, Nate.
Kathy.
Nate,
Yes, ma'am.
hi, Mr.